So today I'm talking a little bit about cosplay mistakes. If you choose to cosplay, you will make mistakes. There is no way to avoid this. I don't care how skilled you are, how seasoned, how professional, whatever, you will make mistakes. And there's a few that are really common that most cosplayers make at least one of these. The joke is that, cosplay is 10% materials and 90% tears. Obviously it's just a joke, but sometimes you really do make mistakes that make you want to cry. So here are a few mistakes that cosplayers commonly make. Number one, and I am totally guilty of this, waiting until the last minute. For whatever reason, cosplayers, we tend to think we're invincible, or we just have this unwavering sense of optimism that somehow we have all this time in the world to create this costume because, hey, the convention's not for like another 6 months, right? So let's just wait a little bit before we start our costume. Flash forward a few months, and we've barely even started the costume. We're trying to scurry. We don't actually have superpowers despite dressing up as superheroes, so there's no way we're going to get this finished on time. Usually we somehow manage to do it, but, you're stressed out trying to get it finished before the convention because it's something you really wanted to wear, and you wish you'd started it 6 months previously like you thought you were going to and just didn't. One of the ways to avoid this is estimate how long you think your costume is going to take you, and then add at least a month. Number two is choosing something beyond your skill level. Now, of course, there are no rules that says how good a costume has to be or anything like that, and you had to be a certain skill level before you can attempt this costume. There's nothing like that. If you're happy with your costume, you want to show up in a red cardboard box and call yourself Iron Man, that is fine, that is totally fine. Don't ever let anybody tell you it's not. However, I know this is true of me, cosplayers tend to be a little bit of, they tend to have a little bit of that perfectionism thing in there. Not so much about other people's costumes, but about our own work, where if it's not up to what we want it to be for ourselves, it doesn't even have to match the movie, but just where we think we should be at a certain level, if we can't complete that, we kind of drive ourselves nuts. So a good rule is to know what your skill level is and pick a costume that you think you can do on that so that you don't drive yourself nuts trying to make yourself work harder on something that you may not be able to accomplish. You will drive yourself nuts if you do this. Number three, sewing the sleeves on inside out. I will not admit how many times I've done this because I've done this so many times. You're just sewing your costume, it's coming along great, you sew the sleeve on, and then you go to put on the costume and you realize the stupid sleeve is on inside out, and you want to scream. So always make sure that you check which way you have the sleeve pinned on before you sew it, because if you sew a sleeve on inside out, it is just the most frustrating thing. Then you have to take the seam ripper and rip it all out. So just pay attention to which way your seams are when you pin them on. It saves you so much sanity. Number four, forgetting the shoes. In the beginning, I did this all the time. I would complete the whole costume and then totally forget that I had to have a pair of shoes to go with it, and somehow a pair of Nikes just really doesn't fit with a Starfleet uniform. So remember the shoes when you're making your costume and include that in your time estimation. Number five, running out of supplies. It doesn't matter whether it's glue sticks or cardstock or fabric or whatever. It's very, very frustrating when, you're on a nice creation streak and you're getting your costume all done, and then suddenly you run out of something. It's just really, really bad feeling, and it almost always happens in an inopportune moment. Like the craft store, in my case, the craft store is too far away to make a drive down to get it, or it's closed, or you don't have time, or whatever. So check your craft supplies beforehand. Make sure you have enough glue sticks or cardstock or whatever you've been needing to do your costume project. And that way you'll save yourself the frustration of running out mid-creation. Number six, not trying on your costume before the convention. I've never actually done this one, but I have several friends who have done this one, and they get the costume all done up and it looks fabulous and everything's ready to go, and then they go to put it on the day of the convention and realize either something breaks or something doesn't fit right or something's off kilter, and had they tried it on before they went to the convention they would have known that, which is why you always want to test your costume before the day of the convention, because it's really, really difficult to fix the day of the convention. You want to get to the convention, the last thing you want to do is have to fix your costume the day of the convention. So always try it on ahead of time to make sure everything fits and looks the way you want it to. Number 7, sewing with no thread. This is not exclusive to cosplayers. Anybody who sews at all, whether you're a dressmaker or a quilt maker or a costume maker, whatever, you end up sewing with no thread at some point. You know, you're just sitting there cruising along, those stitches are practically sewing themselves, and then you realize the bobbin ran out of thread, and you've been sewing blanks the entire time. Extremely, extremely frustrating. Almost as frustrating as sewing the sleeve on inside out. Not quite, but pretty close. It's right up there. So take frequent breaks to make sure that your bobbin has not run out of thread, because it's very frustrating when you get this entire line of stitches sewn and realize they're completely unusable because there was no bottom thread. Number 8. Breaking your costume as soon as you get to the convention. Everybody in my family has done this. Sometimes, no matter how well you construct it, you break it when you get to the convention. Costumes are generally not made to ride real well, so you know, the seatbelt can crack something, or getting in and out of the car can crack something, you can tear something, whatever. It's very frustrating. So, you know, if you break something, don't cry, or okay, maybe cry for a minute because you'll be frustrated. Just don't smear your scar that you spent 3 hours make-upping on your face. But, you know, get over it. Carry a cosplay repair kit in your car so that if you do crack it right when you get there, you can use your duct tape or your sewing thread or whatever it is, you know, whichever piece of the costume you've broken, you can fix it right there. It's much easier than having to try and walk into a convention with a broken costume and then look for the cosplay repair station. So bring your own cosplay repair kit. It'll save you a little bit of trouble if you do end up breaking your costume. Number 9. Assuming you're actually a specific size. This is one thing you should never, ever, ever, ever do. I don't care how many pairs of clothes you've got that tell you your size whatever. When you get a sewing pattern, the sizes on those sewing patterns very rarely match the actual sizes of clothes. So always take your measurements. Don't just read the back of the envelope and say, oh yeah, that's my size, I'm going to cut that piece out of the pattern, because they usually run, sometimes they're like 2 sizes too small, sometimes they're 2 sizes too big, and it's just really weird how they size patterns. So always take your measurements. Never assume you're a certain size when you're sewing with a pattern. And finally, number 10, forgetting to weatherproof your costume. Yes, we all like nice sunny days for conventions. Is Chipmunk following me around? Anyway, yes, we all like nice sunny days for conventions, but sometimes you just end up in one that's pouring rain, and if you have a lot of paint on your costume, that can totally smear and destroy your entire costume that you spent, you know, a million hours working on. So always cover them with some kind of, you know, gloss or something that will shed the water so that you don't wreck your wonderful paint jobs. So, there's 10 mistakes that cosplayers often make. I know I've made almost all of them at least once, and unfortunately some of them many, many times. So if you just kind of keep track of those, it can help you miss them. Leave me a comment below and let me know what cosplay mistakes you commonly make.